You're good to go.
Thank you. Okay, we'll call the May 19th meeting of the Katuitt Fire District Water Department Board of Water Commissioners to order. 5:45 p.m. We have Commissioners Robinson, Commissioner Happenstadt, as well as Superintendent Chris Wiseman and Jen Nash, our office manager, with us. We have a pretty lengthy agenda today. So Jen and I rehearsed, and she's going to help me. I asked her to kick me under the table. I don't know if you can do that by Zoom or not, but we're going to try because we got a lot to cover here. I'll start with our traditional public comment. We do have a few members of the public here, which is great. So I'll open it up to any public comment. For starters, if you have comments on other agenda items, and hopefully you've seen that, we'd ask you hold until those agenda items, but certainly something that's not on the agenda, let us know. So anybody?
Scott, I'm not sure everybody has the agenda with them, so we might just say if, I know there might be some people here who were interested in the Little River, and we'll be discussing that a little more later, but I think that if people have some general comments, they might want to do it now. Okay,
yep. Anybody who would like to talk about Little River or any other item, please just speak right up. We're a small group.
Guess not.
Are you seeing anybody, Jen?
No.
Okay, well, do I see it? No, okay. Well, we'll hold off then and come back to that later. People have comments, questions. I guess I have not had a chance to review the meeting minutes, so I'm going to suggest that we postpone that, if that's okay with the other two commissioners.
Sure.
And also in light of how much we have on the agenda, so we'll move right on to Chris for both the water quality report and the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. Water quality report, all samples that we have taken for coliform will come back clean this month, or in the month of, yeah, sure, here we go, April. We did get our results back for our sodium results that you guys asked me to take. We've been taking them at the tank and at 414 Main where the tank was. And they are all over the SMLC. They're averaging around 22. And the SMLC is 20. So they are out there now. I don't know if it's the time of year or what, but sometimes they're lower, sometimes they're higher, depending on the season. So they have been averaging though right around the same for the last 3 months, anywhere from 26 to 20. We did also do, and we're waiting on results for nitrates this month, MTBE and SOCs at Station 3. So I'll have a more report on that next month.
Okay.
That's water quality. Any questions on water quality?
Well, I guess we should keep this sodium thing in front of us. It's not a primary standard with its acute health effects, but it's something that we want to watch. I think we know some of the likely sources. So I guess I'll just suggest that we take that up at a future meeting. Let's keep it on the agenda and keep us informed, Chris, because it's something we want to keep our eye on. But
do you want to still test the 3 sites that we've been testing? They're only about $12 a piece to take them.
I think so.
We did not take them this month just because I didn't have the bottles.
Yeah,
but we could go out and do them before the end of the month, but they just will all be taken on the same day.
What do the other commissioners think about that?
I'd like to see them continued. It's not a lot of money. We have the money in the budget, right? We do have the money in the budget.
Yes.
Budget's coming to an end. We want to make sure that we don't go over any line item. But to me, it seems like we need to try to narrow down the source so that we can deal with this if we can and get that that concentration down. So I for one would like to see more tests.
Okay, I agree.
Chris, what is the time involved? Do you have to truck them over to Barnstable or?
Correct. Yeah, it's testing the 3 sites in the morning that probably take maybe an hour to do. We run them for a little while just to make sure we get everything in the drawdown situation from the tank and just basically from the main at 414. So it might be 3 hours out of the day, one guy, which isn't going to hurt us right now. To tell you the truth, I mean, we're kind of working like a well-oiled machine right now. I hate to say it, but that extra truck has been able to help us out tremendously too, where we can send one guy out painting hydrants, one guy to the pumping stations, and one guy to do out the work orders. So it's been working out really, really great right now. But we'll go through that later on and everything else.
Okay, well, let's keep that testing going for now, Chris.
Scott,
Okay.
Is sodium considered something that is seasonal? I mean, is it related to road salt or does it just persist?
I
through
think
the
it's
whole year?
highly likely to road salt, and as well as some of the, not only Route 28, but some of the private developments we talked about earlier. I'm guessing that's the most likely source. In terms of the timing, you know, it's moving via groundwater. So the fact that it's there now may be, you know, a source from last winter. And, you know, one thought I do have is maybe we can ask Tom Cambereri to look at the model that we've invested in. Another thing that particle tracking can also have a time element on it. So he might be able to use that to try to evaluate some of this data.
But if it's not really a seasonal thing, we're not trying to measure seasonal fluctuations. Do we really need to do it every month?
Probably not, but I think getting a good picture on it, in that it is high. I mean, the standard procedure when you have higher results is to resample and increase your database, just so you have a little more database to work with. So, and the cost is so low, I think it just makes sense to do that at this
Okay,
point.
Chris says we have the manpower and it's okay.
Yeah, but I do
And
think
just-
we should. Go
Just
ahead,
a
Chris.
quick note, I apologize to interrupt, but
No problem.
it is something that's going on Cape Wide.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah, as I've said before, there's a couple towns that said we would love to have your levels right now compared to what they have.
Okay, let's move on to the superintendent's report, Chris.
All right, superintendent's report read on May 19th for April. In April of 2020, we pumped, thank you, 8,968,000 gallons of water. In April of 2021, we pumped 10,148,000 gallons of water, for an increase of 1,180,000 gallons difference from last year. It's quite a bit. Jen made me up a little graph here, but I can't really share it with you, I guess. Just so I had looked so I could see it. It's quite a comparison. Last month was the only month that's actually gone down. Even in the situation that we had last year where it wasn't a drought, we're using a lot more water than we should still. We had one new water service that went in over on Main Street. We had one replacement service over on Newtown Road. The flushing program is finished in record time. I said last month that JR was really doing well out there. We had minimal complaints. I don't even think there was any damage at all on the streets or anything. He did a great job out there, and he did it fast. So it was nice to be able to have that done. We still are in a level 1 mild drought here. I'd like to wait one more month and see if anything happens with the April showers that supposedly will be coming before I put any kind of voluntary restrictions out there. But if it's still at mild drought next meeting, we're going to have to drop and put a voluntary at least out. Right now, our permit doesn't say that we have to, because we're still working off our old permit. And I'm not so sure that the state they want us to get on the new, and then we're going to have to very soon. So we're going to have to get going on that also. But we're keeping an eye on it, keeping an eye on the stations. Our pumps are down still about 2 to 3 feet than they were last year at this time, before we had the levels that we had to pump last year. Just a little about the new employee, John. He's doing great. He's like a little sponge. He's learning quite a bit. The guys are doing a great job training him. I've been out with him a couple times. I think he's going to really be, he's a go-getter and someone who likes to keep busy. Other than that, I did write down, and I'm sorry, I have it on another piece of paper here. I'd like to keep the COVID restrictions that we have going for a little while. I know that things are going to ease up pretty soon. We can actually open up the building to the public, but I'd rather hold off and just see after we ease these restrictions what happens. We're still running pretty well as we are. I don't see a need to, it's not hurting anybody the way we're running right now. So I'd like to keep them going for a couple months, 2-3 months, and then reassess it, see if we get any kind of surge back or anything like that. The last thing was Monday night's meeting had this is more of a employee thing. I brought this up in the past. The district is giving the fire department a stipend for not taking insurance. I don't know if you were at the meeting the other night when Ray gave his presentation saying that it's saving money when they don't take it. That has not been offered to the water department. I think, Tom, if you want to make a comment, you brought it to their attention back when it originally got brought to the fire department. And I believe Fran said, we're not offering it to the water department because it was something that was negotiated in the union contract. Is that true, Tom? Am I mistaken?
Correct.
Okay. I believe they just gave the fire chief it, and I don't believe, I'll ask him if he's on out there. I'm not sure if he's union or not, but I don't believe he is. So it seems like if you're going to offer it to other district employees, it should be offered to the water department at the same time. Something I'd like maybe you guys to bring up to the financial committee and see what's going on. Other than that, that's my report.
How
Okay,
many
thanks,
of our
Chris.
employees don't take the insurance from the village, from the district?
I believe 2 out of the 5. But I don't know. I don't know if there's a HIPAA law there or if it's something that's, I believe everybody else takes it. Jen, I don't know if you want to make a comment, if you know or not.
I believe you're correct. 2 employees
Okay.
would not.
I know of at least 1. I can tell you that.
He who shall not be named.
Right.
Well, Tom?
But that would be a question also for Ray, exactly who and what also.
Okay.
Tom.
Mr. Chair, could I ask indirectly through you if Paul would mind sharing a little bit about his, since he's on, I thought that I heard that his is kind of built into his salary and it's not the stipend that some of the others get, but I'm not sure about that.
Paul, are you available to answer that?
Absolutely. So my firefighters get a stipend. It's they get a stipend equal to 50% of the lowest cost health insurance plan, which they are eligible for as a stipend, and they get it in quarterly payments, I believe, I think it's in quarterly payments over the year. My contract I negotiated is a little bit different. I also get the 50%, the same number they get, but it's in my base pay. So it's effectively the same thing. I guess it's a little complicated because the Prudential is the one who they've got a line item for the health insurance payments. And actually they do, they've got 2, they can pay out of the same account. So I think they use the same line item. So they use a line item and they either pay the health insurance premium or they pay the stipend out of the same account. So I don't think it matters to them.
Thank you.
Well, Chris, I think we certainly can bring this up with Prudential and see what the what the options are would be the next step. I'm not sure when we do that, but we can look into that.
Okay.
So thanks for bringing that up. Anything else with your superintendent's report?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is old business. It's the irrigation policy. And I'm going to be very brief here. As you recall, at the last meeting, I gave you sort of an updated draft of a possible regulation. Since then, we've also had a review by attorney Mark Boudreau, who's given us some comments. Thanks, Jen. I don't know that we need to go through this in detail at this point, but we've had discussions about the last change was the option of requiring meters for irrigation. We did have some comments back on that. I think there's a couple options here. One is trying to meter it and charge it at a different rate. The other one is simply try to build in a conservation rate, as we've already done, with a higher water rate for more usage, which is certainly a simpler approach. And we could actually, increase those rates again if we feel that we want to provide more of a incentive. So I guess at this point, I'm looking for feedback where we go from here. Happy to keep working on this, but just looking for some suggestions from the other commissioners, and certainly we can take some public comment on this tonight as well. But let me start with the other commissioners. Any thoughts from Mark or Tom?
Well, I thought we had an interesting letter from, I think it was Ms. Souza. It really is about the water use, not necessarily how it's delivered. So I think it's a fair point. What if somebody doesn't have an in-ground system, but they are, using multiple sprinklers on a more than regular basis? That is using the drinking water supply for irrigation just as much as a in-ground system is. And I don't even know whether an in-ground system might be more efficient, because it is, if it has sensors and whatnot that a sprinkler that's moved around wouldn't have. So I thought that was an interesting point. So it's really getting to the water usage, the excessive water usage. And I don't know how practical it is to install separate meters. That would mean more readings, just the practicality of it. I don't know if I've been convinced that that's really practical. Maybe somebody can explain more about that.
Well, I did find out that there are a couple of other towns that are doing this. I think Chatham might be one. And I did speak with Chris about physical, this is certainly possible. There's a charge, obviously, to do it. But I don't want to, I don't want to propose something that's unnecessary. And I agree with you. The simpler we can keep it, the better. And I think the simplest method is to go back to the water rate structure, which we've kind of got partially in place now. I will note, Jen informed me today that there are a number of homeowners who are opting for the private wells. So what we're doing so far, just the outreach and the new rates and the moratorium is having an effect. So I think we're headed a little bit in the right direction, just with sort of existing communications. So I would, I'm happy to kind of back off. I think the proposal is still no new hookups, which I think, in my feeling, is we want to maintain that. But whether or not we need meters, I'm certainly separate meters. I'm certainly not convinced of that either, Mark.
So just to continue that thought, I think there should be no more new systems installed hooked up to the water supply. But I think there should be a variant system as well built into this. We did hear a reasonable comment from an elderly couple that, we're not able to move their sprinkler system around, and they would much prefer to have an automatic system. So I think that, there are some cases where we might consider variants on that. But I really think that we didn't address in the new tier water rates that we did in the last couple of years. We weren't really addressing the issue that you brought up about how it affects the irrigation. And I think that the top tier is really where you would affect that. And I think that top tier should be much higher. It's only a gradual increase over the next to top level tier. So I think that's really where we ought to be focusing.
I tend to agree. And I'll just note that later in the agenda today, I did put water rates on here, this being part of it. So we could certainly, perhaps if we want to go that direction, I would suggest that we have a maybe more detailed discussion about updates on the water rates as a whole. But Tom, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I find it really interesting that, when we did raise the water rates, and granted, we've got then at the same time started going into a drought and we had the COVID pandemic. And so there were a number of factors that confound this, but we raised the rates thinking that it would help with increased efficiencies and less water use, less pumpage, so that we could maintain the supply without exceeding our permit. And the opposite happened. The water rates, the water use went up. Again, there might be a lot going on that's affecting that. So I don't know if the rate structure is going to be effective, but I certainly would like to try that before passing any more regulations telling people how to use their water. If somebody wants to use their water for an in-ground irrigation system and that's where they find their enjoyment on their property, I don't really want to tell them they can't do that, particularly if we have a higher rate on that, and if they're using that water as efficiently as they can. They've got a modern system with the conservation measures built into it. That to me, and Leslie Souza made a good point there, that you can save a lot more water if you're going to be an irrigator with a high quality system than you can with a furrow or a flood, or a drip, right? So I'm torn a little bit. I know we're pushing the limits on our water supply and on our pumpage quantities, and I don't want to exceed those limits. And I think in some of our sub watersheds, the Little River, for instance, we have exceeded those limits when we see that thing go dry, even in wet years. So we need to do something. And I think maybe it's the rate structure at first that we look at and we implement, and we keep pushing the issue and talking about the issue, and doing some more outreach and hoping that more people get onto private wells, and that those people that want to put in-ground irrigation systems in hear our message and do so with that in mind, with conservation in mind, and they work to ensure that whoever's putting the systems in for them uses the best technology available to a private landowner in a residential setting.
Just to clarify what you're saying, are you suggesting, Commissioner Robinson, I think, supported the idea of no new hookups for new systems with a variance for a special case? Where are you on that particular item?
I don't like it. I don't think that we should just say blanket no new hookups for new systems. I'm backing away from that just because I think it's a little bit of an overreach on our part without giving the users the benefit of the doubt that they could put in a system that's efficient.
Well,
maybe any new system should have its own meter just so that we can see what the efficiency is.
Yeah.
And that's part of their cost.
Well, I guess I just like to recap what I see as where we're at in terms of some of the drivers here. We are bumping up against our permit, which was already stated. We just completed a hydrogeologic model that shows that under summer conditions, we're pulling like 35% of the flow out of the river, which in my view is an ecological impact that we should be avoiding. That's existing. That's sort of existing practices. I think it's fair to say that a large portion of the summer peak flow is irrigation. The other thing I'm recalling is when I interviewed with some of the irrigation professionals on the technologies of limiting use, I think they pretty much admitted that it's still going to be a significant increase in demand, and that frankly the technologies that are out there were pretty marginal reduction. I have notes on that, but I think my recollection is like 15 or 20% water savings. And I also recall them telling me that's if the homeowners replace the parts on these systems on a regular basis, and they told me that doesn't happen in their experience. So all in all, my take on it, Tom, was that it was a little bit of a feel-good thing. Like, yes, I have a state-of-the-art conservation technology, but in fact, it's still a pretty significant net increase in pumping. And the other thing I put out there, one of the original drivers is I do think, in addition to bumping up against the permit, there's some water quality issues. The more we pump, the more we pull in more septic systems. Certainly, you can see that in Tom's modeling, which we can talk about later. And certainly pulling potentially more iron and manganese from the wetlands, which I think there's a potential linkage to this $10 million treatment plant. So those are my views on this. And I guess just to kind of, so we can complete the polling, I certainly support the idea of no new hookups with the variance possibility. I agree with Commissioner Robinson that always special cases, but it seems to me that we're headed in the wrong direction with more and more of these irrigation systems, and I think they are a pretty significant drain. So I guess that's where we stand in terms of thoughts. We'll have to discuss this again. We're not going to make a decision tonight, but
So Scott, I mean, to address Tom's concern,
yeah,
we're not saying there can't be any new in-ground systems. We're just saying they shouldn't be connected to the water supply, or at least that's what I'm saying.
oh, correct, yes.
I think Tom
absolutely.
is saying that he would like to give people the flexibility to either install a well or connect to the water supply, recognizing that they might have to pay much higher rates for that. Is that what you're saying, Tom?
That is what I'm saying. And I'm also saying that that as an option, and I think this is a good option, that if you're going to put in a new system, you're going to be, you will have to hook up a meter to that system, a separate meter.
A second meter, good, yeah.
And then when we have to have conservation restrictions, it's clear, you know, that those people are going to have to decrease their use on that meter.
Jen,
That
could you
be
put that-
regulated? That can be regulated much more easily than having somebody like one of our operators go out and tell somebody, hey, you can't put in a new system, because new systems have gone in.
Quite a few, I think.
Jen, could you put that breakdown again of the people using the different tiers? So to me, it looks like 23% of the services are using the top two tiers, 23%. So less than a quarter, more than a fifth. And that might be an estimate to me of how many people have irrigation systems. And, you know, so I think that those are the tiers that I think that there shouldn't just be a gradual increase from $7 to $8 to $9. I mean, I would make that 60,000 to 100,000 gallon tier. I'd make that $15. I'd make over 100,000. I'd make that $20 for 100 for 1,000 gallons. I mean, and that's the kind of increase I'm talking about to capture, you know, to make it really understandable supply and demand and the pricing to affect behavior. I mean, if people really want to pay that much to be hooked up to the water system and pay through the nose for that particular type of water for irrigation, then I guess that's the freedom of the purse. But
the other thought there is, if in fact we are heading towards a $10 million treatment plant to treat iron and manganese, if in fact this is in part from drawing water from a larger area, then that provides a financial incentive to head in that direction and pay for the treatment. Others, I think, would like to avoid doing that. But I guess it goes back to the free country idea. We can do whatever we want and just pay for it. So there's two different schools of thought there. But I do agree that the rate structure is minimal increases from category to category, and I'm not sure it's providing enough of a disincentive. Again, we are seeing a lot of people go on to private wells. As far as I know, some people can have an equally beautiful lawn on a private well than they can with the public system. And if we make it cost effective to do that, then that kind of solves the problem and preserves people's rights to irrigate their lawns as much as they want to. But it would take the pressure off the public drinking water supply. So I like the idea I like all the ideas here. May we consider different rates? I like Tom's idea of required meters for any new systems. I would prefer not to allow new systems going on there, but if that's the direction we want to go, I can support that with the other provisions. Further
Yeah,
thoughts?
you could have an in-ground system that was only doing a, you know, 1,000 square feet of lawn. I mean, it's not necessarily the amount of lawn, it's the convenience of the system, I think, is
Right.
what a lot of our elderly people like.
It's
I'm
convenient.
seeing,
It's that's where they get their pleasure. People like to work in their lawn on their landscapes.
yep,
And they
I
spend
see,
a lot of time in those areas, and they're willing to pay for that. And I think, yeah, if we raise the rates enough to make it truly a disincentive, because obviously we didn't this last time,
right,
then that might motivate them to put in their own well.
right,
And it also doesn't penalize the new hookups, the people that have always wanted to have an irrigation system or that want to change all of a sudden. And I think with a summer internship, if we get that position in this budget, we
Yep.
could get a better idea just how much wastage there is from active in-ground irrigators.
yeah.
Right
I want
now,
to recognize Don Schwinn. He's had his hand up here for a little bit, so Mr.
Uh,
Schwinn.
can you hear me?
We can.
Because we just got here from Florida yesterday, and I'm not sure if any of this stuff is working. And I know you don't have a picture, but I didn't want to show you my tan. I've written to you before. We have a very small plot of lawn, maybe a couple thousand square feet, and we have a quote for like 15 nozzles to do the whole thing. But, and that's a couple $1,000, but I haven't gotten a quote yet, but I've been fishing around, and it looks like for us to put a well in might cost $2,000 or $3,000, and we'd have, a pump, and we'd have an electrical circuit, and we'd have to worry about freezing, and not that you wouldn't if you had an in-the-ground system, but at least the well part of it. And we live on Old Post Road where there are a lot of really good sized irrigation systems up and down the road. And I got to wonder, why an existing system that might be using 1,000 or 2,000 gallons of water, whatever, a day should be allowed to continue, even though on a meter, while we can't because we're too old, even though you have left the opening to hook up a hose type sprinkler system. We unfortunately have gotten too old to be able to put up our tripods and haul the hoses away when somebody wants to mow the lawn, if we can't do either. So just thinking about it, I would be happy to have a meter installed and to pay whatever your rate is for low consumption, rather than to have to put in a well. Because to me, and Scott knows, we've both been in the water business a long time, wells come with a burden of maintenance and so forth. So I would like to at least put in my 2 cents to allow, even though I know Scott, you really don't want to do that, small systems to go in if they have a meter and they're willing to pay the freight. That to me, that's much better than having to deal with pumps and piping and electrical stuff and so forth. So I just wanted to get that thought across to you fellas.
Okay, thank you, Don. Other comments from people? Questions? We have a lot of people here.
Nice.
Anybody else want to speak on this?
Betsy Haggerty has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead, Betsy. You may still be on mute. Yes, you're muted, Betsy.
All right, I was talking to Jen the other day and we went through our bill and she said that we're only using, I believe, 64,000 gallons for our drip system and our irrigation, and we worked it out. It was going to be a 10-year payback doing them well. But you're saying that you're encouraging people to do wells? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
All right, and the reason being is because you're going to raise the rates?
Oh, no, the reason is,
significantly?
I'm sorry.
You're going to raise the rates significantly?
It's one proposal.
We're discussing that, but that's not the reason we're asking people to go into private wells. We're asking them to go into private wells because we're bumping up against our capacity of our system. And secondly, we just completed a study that documents we are drawing water out of the, away from the Little River and the wetlands. We're causing damage to the environment by pumping so much water. And we're
So
trying to.
where is this well water coming from? Isn't it from the same aquifer?
It's the same aquifer, but if you spread out the pumping, you do not have the drawdown. What's causing the issues in the river and the wetlands is because the wells are pumping a lot in one place, they create a very large drawdown or lowering of the water table. If you spread the wells out across the village, you're right, you're pumping the same amount of water, but the drawdown is much, much, much less, probably imperceptible.
You have,
Because as Tom Cambereri explained it to us last time, it's much better to have lots of little straws sucking than one great big huge straw.
Uh-huh.
the great big huge ones form like a funnel, a cone of depression it's called. And so they really deplete the water table, dropping it considerably, where the public supply is coming from. So if we
Okay.
spread that out, we'll have less of an impact on the water table itself.
So if we put a well in, we're only paying for what the water in our house. We're not paying for anything outside.
Correct.
Okay.
And with
Okay.
well water, you don't have to necessarily treat it either. Because it's
Right, right.
treated with the natural filtration systems in the earth.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your questions.
Can I ask Scott?
Yeah.
So Jen gave us this breakdown of the number of users in the tiers. We know Jen's good with math. Can you tabulate, Jen, not right now, but sometime soon, the number of gallons that are pumped by those people in those tiers? And then we could see, what's the current revenue from each tier, to see whether we think, what's an appropriate level of increase. Am I explaining it correctly? So
Yes, I'll follow up with you on it after. I think I have that all pulled into an Excel spreadsheet where I can.
So,
Sort of.
residence A is in that category and they have 82,000 gallons, and residence B has 91,000 gallons. So they're all over the 60,000 tipping point by a certain amount, and add up those marginal increases and come up with total number of gallons per year per tier. And then what's the current revenue out of that? And then what do the commissioners think would be an appropriate increase to encourage conservation? I think that's, and again, these are, the commissioners can raise and lower rates very quickly, and we want to do it through a public process, and we're not going to do it whimsically, but I think that if we're finding that it's still not having the effect we're looking for, we can raise them again, or figure out some other means of encouraging conservation. The rate structure is a little clunky, but I think it is a way that it doesn't require people to enforce regulations or other ways to modify behavior. Is it skewed toward encouraging conservation? Not necessarily. I mean, some people are happy to pay whatever it takes to have that green lawn. But it should at least give some people pause and consider alternatives like conservation or private wells.
Or alternative landscaping.
Yeah, and the other thing about the alternative wells are that you get the benefits of the nitrates in the ground. So you've got,
Yeah. Letters, we read all of them, we discuss all of them, even if you can't be here next time, and talk to your friends and neighbors, because we want this to be as transparent and public as possible. Next item on the agenda, new business, is PFOA, PFOS. We've talked about this in the past with Tom Cambereri. I think maybe just to introduce this issue, these are two so-called emerging contaminants that are showing up more and more across the country. I'm running into this in a lot of my consulting projects everywhere. It's a significant issue. We've had some comments on it, and Chris has done a great job staying on top of this. Just for the public here, we've actually done more testing than we're required to do because we're interested in making sure that we don't have a problem. And so far we don't have a problem, but nonetheless, it's something that's out there. So we want to talk about it. And I don't know, Chris, do you want to start with this?
Well, I just want to say something about the past. I actually just glanced through the minutes that we didn't accept tonight, and it was extended till June 23rd.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just wanted to get that going. You can
Okay,
go
thank
with the PFOS all you want. I can tell you that we haven't done any more testing since the required testing
Yep.
that we had. We've talked about, we did put money in the budget to do more if we feel so inclined to do it. But right now we haven't been required to do it, so we haven't.
And we haven't found anything.
Correct. We did find the slight was still below the MCL. There was a little bit
Right.
at station number 1 and a very, very tiny bit at station 4, only in one of the sections. I think it's the 20 that is the MCL. There's 10 for action period, and we were at like a combined of everything at 6. So out of those 6 components, one had 2, and another had 2, something like that. You break it down, you add them together, and we had 6, a combined 6, which gets us below the threshold.
Yeah. And we did have a letter from Mr. Markowitz, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Jen.
Correct.
And I spoke with him on the phone. I don't think he's here tonight, is he?
I did not see him, no.
Okay. I thought he might join us. We talked about a number of items, including PFOS, PFOA, and he had some questions about what we're thinking about with regard to treatment. It is possible to treat at the wellhead. I just happened to attend a EPA seminar on this, so I included a figure. Maybe we could just put that up there, Jen, from EPA estimating costs of treating at the wellhead, if in fact we ever need to do that. And my recollection is for a system our size, it's about $500,000 a year. If you read across that chart, about 1 MGD equals, according to the EPA estimates, about $500,000 per year to run a treatment system. Of course, Barnstable is involved in this, several other towns in Massachusetts. It looks like it comes from more sources than just the firefighting. It probably comes from domestic sources via septic systems and very low concentrations, which leads me to another item I want to talk about, source water protection. Now that we understand a little bit better where our water is coming from, I think we should be thinking forward here about this, and just, even though we don't have a problem, thinking about making sure we don't get into a problem. And I'll repeat at least my own belief that the more we pump, the larger are the capture areas to the wells and the more potential contamination sources we pull into them. So that's another advantage of pumping less water. And if we're pumping water to irrigate lawns in part significantly, and we're pulling in contaminants to the drinking water supply, I think that's an important trade-off we should be discussing very publicly and very transparently. Not only the cost issue, but the public health issue. So I'll just leave it at that and see if others want to add anything on this or discuss this. I do plan to get back with Mr. Markowitz with another phone call just to further discuss that, but that's pretty much, I think that summarizes our initial conversation.
great work, Scott. Thank you for doing this.
Well, maybe, are there any public comment on that issue? Questions? Well, maybe I'll just launch into the next one because it's related. I wanted to put source water protection plan on here. First of all, that terminology comes from the Safe Drinking Water Act and EPA. EPA nationally and Mass DEP recommends that every water supplier, every town have a so-called source water protection plan, which is kind of what it sounds like. It's a plan to look at where's your water coming from, what can you do to minimize risks? And what I'd add, Jen, could you put up those 3 graphics? We just spent some good money on this modeling report that Tom Cambreri did, so I want to get as much out of it as we can. And frankly, I think there's a lot to get. It's great work that he did. And just as Jen's putting this up there, you may recall he modeled, and this will be interesting, I think, for the public here who may not have seen this before. He was able to model where does the water come from for our main well field under a variety of pumping conditions. Winter, which is when we're in, and we'll start with this one. Maybe if you can blow that up larger if possible. I don't know if you can do that, Jen. There you go. So maybe just for orientation, that's our main well field. Maybe you could point to a couple things. I asked him to put some roads on here. I think that's Sampson Mill Road running through the middle there, which is a dirt road.
Here?
Yeah, that's Sampson's Mill. And maybe you could point to Old Post Road on, I think that's Old Post. No, it's not. Sorry.
This here?
Is there another road? Putnam is labeled just for orientation.
Okay.
So just point to the 3 wells, Jen, the 3 primary wells in the well field right in the middle there.
In here?
The little dots. I wish I could point to them.
At the end of the blue, if you with a little
Here,
Right there.
here,
Yeah,
and
those are
here.
the 3
Okay.
wells. And then the lines that run to upper left are what are called particle tracks. That's where the water is flowing from to get to those wells. This scenario, and if you could just pull it down so we could see a little more further in the north, there you go. And each one of those these are individual lots. So every one of those little squares is a property. Most of them with septic homes, and all of them, I think, with septic systems, because we don't have any sewer here. So where the lines run through the lots, you can presume that those septic systems are going into the groundwater, whatever comes out of the septic systems. And we know there's nitrogen, and we think there's other stuff, emerging contaminants at low levels, and they're heading towards our wells. So this is why, I was going to say I believe, but I think everybody in the industry believes now. That's why we're finding these things in our drinking water supply, because the water we're pumping is not coming from undeveloped land. It's coming from people's property where we have septic systems. It also comes, the sodium, these roads that cross through those particle tracks, if those are salted in the winter, that salt gets into the groundwater and then flows towards the well. So this image here is winter pumping. If we go to the next image, Jen, that was average pumping year round. This is the summer pumping. And you can see that the lines get a little bit wider. More properties are contributing to those wells. You can almost count the number of lots there, and every lot you count is a septic system that's going into our drinking water supply. If we can go to the next graphic, which is I think the zone 2. Yeah, this is the worst case pumping. So this might be what we're going to have soon this summer, because this condition occurs when you're pumping maximum and when there's no rain, no recharge. And you can see that in each one of these scenarios, the flow lines are getting wider and wider. We're pulling in more and more properties. So I wanted to put this back before the commissioners and certainly the public listening in, so we can all understand and again be very transparent where our drinking water comes from. It's something that's not maybe pleasant to think about, but you can actually do a computation of figure out what percentage of your drinking water has gone through a septic system, and it's not negligible. So it's something we need to be mindful of, and maybe there's some source water protection strategies that we can think about. For example, the town of Barnstable has a long-term sewering plan in phase 3 or phase 4. It does include this area, but it's actually beyond phase 3, so it may in fact never happen. There are alternative septic systems, which are looking very encouraging these days. So it's possible we could target some of these areas and talk about trying to upgrade some septic systems to try to get better treatment. So I'm going to leave it at that. Yep, Mark.
So, if Jen can pull that down any farther to show the north area, but Yeah, keep going. Pull it so more of the north shows. Nope, the other way. There you
Keep
go.
going down,
Keep
a little more
going.
down. Actually,
Anyway,
you're
my
gonna- there
point
you go,
is
there you
that,
go, there you go, perfect.
yeah. We're not even seeing all of that capture area because it extends much farther to the
Correct.
north and west, right?
Right,
So it's not just the subdivision closest to the wells. It's the stuff that's even farther away that's getting a ride on the particle tracks, for many miles in some cases, right?
that's right, yeah.
So it's not like we're picking on one neighborhood, it's everybody that's in that path. And it actually extends into parts of Mashpee and certainly our other well that wasn't near the river, the well number 5 over at the west end of Katuitt. That certainly is dealing with Mashpee groundwater that's getting into Katuitt's wells. And so this is it's not just a Katuitt thing, it's a sort of a sub-regional thing, right?
That's right.
And there's a lot of education that we could do, certainly with people in those areas, but
Yeah.
I think there are other innovative ways that maybe we could even encourage by some kind of a small subsidy, people that wanted to add something to their septic systems or, do different kinds of fertilizers or whatever that maybe the water department could have mini grants for.
I think that's a good idea. I'll mention, I think part of it is, first of all, getting the information out there so people understand what's going on, transparency. And I will mention, Mark, I'm working with the town of Wellfleet right now, or that's exactly what we're suggesting. The town, in fact, is going to town meeting later in June to appropriate money to provide a subsidy for people to upgrade their septic systems to some of these new innovative and alternative systems. So your thought is a good one, I think, and something we could think about here. I just really wanted to introduce this topic partly in concert with the PFOS, PFOA discussion, and perhaps a little bit of the sodium discussion as well. I wanted to remind us that we have this great tool now. And I would suggest, Jen, if you go back to, we're looking at this one, but this is the worst case one. If we go back to the prior one, that's the summer pumping. That's probably a more realistic target area. If we wanted target areas, it's very rare that the bigger zone 2 contribution occurs, but this is what's occurring arguably every summer. And so that's, we could target programs either through education or subsidies or what have you. And I simply wanted to get this out there and have us start thinking about it. And I also think it's an illustration of what I was talking about earlier. The more we pump, the bigger these areas get, and we pull in more areas. So I think that is a consideration. Part of a source water protection program could be pump less water. And it also, I think, goes back to why not take irrigation water from a place that we're not trying to protect and treat as drinking water. It may be that we're pumping almost double the amount of water during the summer because of lawn irrigation, in my opinion. So these areas could be close to half the size if we were going back to our irrigation discussion, if we simply took the water from other locations for irrigation, because we're not so concerned with some of these pollutants, I think, which put on our lawn, but we're putting drinking water on our lawns. So all these issues go together, and I just wanted to kind of put it out there. And again, remind us that we have this tool. Any public comments or questions on this while we have this up here? I can't see it.
Is the Canberra report on our website now?
It is, yes.
So I know there are people that are concerned, particularly about the Little River. Is this a chance to brief people on that, Scott, from last session? I think the takeaways that we talked about from the report were that the water in Little River is affected by 3 things. The primary driver is the water table levels at any given point in time in the year, seasonal fluctuations, and that we've been through an enormous drought period for the past 14 months,
Right.
Just really significant. And it hasn't rebounded yet. It usually rebounds over the winter. It really hasn't.
Yeah.
So that's the main reason why there's no water in the upper reaches of the Little River right now. The second contributor was Lovell's Pond, but we realized that that ditch that leads out of Lovell's Pond is really just an irrigation ditch for the old cranberry bogs. It was never a natural outlet. That was a kettle pond that was artificially breached to provide irrigation water to the upriver cranberry bogs in the last 100 years. So as those went out of production, there was no need to keep that ditch going. And the fact that there's no water coming out of Lovell's Pond into Little River is not a result of an engineering mishap or anything else. It's just the fact that it's not needed up there because there's no cranberry bog irrigation anymore. So it's really the water table that's affecting the water in the upper reaches of the river. And then the third driver, as you pointed out, is the pumping of the Katuitt water supply. The main well field is located just to the west of Little River, and during high pumping rates, any drought conditions that are primarily affecting the river are going to be enhanced and exacerbated by the increased pumping of the system. So I know there was some chat about how, we have to open up Lovell's Pond to fix the Little River, but that's not going to do it. It's the water's just going to drain into the ditch and go right into the ground. It's not going to flow through that ditch. It would have to be severely excavated to much greater depth. And that would lower Lovell's Pond to a level that people probably wouldn't accept either. So what we need to do is tell Mother Nature to bring the rain back.
And possibly pump less water.
Okay.
As you said, they're cumulative. You're right. The water levels are down because of drought, but the water levels are also down because we pump them. So we can't control the drought, but we can control the pumping. So anyways, enough said on this. Tom?
Too, if I may, is that, if we're going to look at the tier structure, we might want to look at it yearly too. I mean, not changing the rates completely every year, but setting the rates based on the drought conditions.
That's an interesting idea.
And they change depending on where we're at any given period of time. That's some food for thought there. The other thing I'd like to say is that with the incentivizing homeowners to upgrade septic systems, I think that's a fantastic idea. And one way we could do that is to give those people that do the upgrades lower tiered water rates.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah,
we can just drop their
I
water.
like that.
So we have that flexibility too.
Well, I would ask the commissioners and certainly the public that's here tonight to give this some thought. And I would like to keep this on the agenda too, because I think it's something that it's going to take, clearly going to take some time. We've already had a couple of good ideas here that are worth more thinking. So what I'd like to do is maybe start accumulating a list. It doesn't be a long list. Maybe it's 3 or 4 things. We've already identified a couple of them now, including what you just suggested, Tom. And let's start thinking about this and evaluating this, because I think this could be a pretty...
This is part of a summer intern research to research the number of lots in those particle paths.
Well, it could be. We could broaden the scope a little bit on this person and have the person work on both the irrigation and the source water. I think that's a good idea.
It's a great idea.
Good suggestion. So let's come, and actually another good segue, Tom, you mentioned water rates again. So that's the next thing on the agenda. And we've already talked about this, so we can probably dispense with this quickly, but I would like us to, and all this stuff is interconnected. So it makes sense to talk about at the same time.
Yep.
I would like us, when we return to the irrigation policy discussion, it sounds like one of the options we talked about tonight is increasing the higher tier water rates. And I would like to put this item of an exemption or a reduction for what I'll call food preparation, because I think it's, in my opinion, it's unfair to charge those people the higher rates because they use more water if in fact it's going for food. My own belief is drinking water supply is highly valuable. it's costly to treat and protect. And in my opinion, a higher use would be drinking water and food production, and obviously internal use within the home, showers and whatnot. But I would definitely put outside landscaping uses at a lower priority. That's my own opinion. But I do think as we approach the water rate issue, which I think we should, and I would also like to talk about food production. We're fortunate to have some really good local establishments that are providing an important service here. And Jen put a great, I don't know if you want to show your table really quickly, Jen?
Sure.
She put a great, we talked about this today. She's done a great survey and I identified more uses than I thought of that are actually doing food production. I don't know if people can see that, but there's, what are those, 10 of them, right?
And I realized we left the Mariners Lodge off there, which they also do meals once a month.
So these are restaurants, churches that do food production, and a couple of other uses that do a couple different things that, again, if we're going to raise water rates, my own belief is we should not be impacting these people because they're using the water for, I would say, the highest and best use: drinking water, food production, and bathing. Domestic, personal water use would be my vote on how we prioritize our limited resource.
I like that, Scott. I get a little concerned when I hear the word or the term food production because I automatically think farming, which requires irrigation, and livestock production, which requires huge volumes of water. So
And
glad
I
that you
guess,
put this up there. So it's food preparation.
okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, we don't have any, to my knowledge, any significant amount of food production irrigation in our district. other
Well,
than
there's
some-
cranberries, which are not really in the district anymore, but could come
Right,
back. And there's
right.
there's some local food producers here in the village.
Yeah, so call it food preparation. That's a good. So again, I just would like you to think about this. I would like to revisit the water rates next time, and I'd like to talk about both irrigation rates and food rates being perhaps dealt with differently. Any public comments, input, questions on that?
If you go back to those numbers, they're being affected by COVID. So a lot of them had to shut down, right? So it's hard to see the impact of the increased rates unless it's captured in 2019. When did the rates change? That bar was in 2018, 19, Jen?
July of 19 is when the new rates went into effect.
So
Sorry,
we
I'll
really
forget
don't
about that.
have a good clean year, Scott, of a full
Right.
year's experience with the new rates and what effect it had on these establishments, particularly with the, maybe you could say the fresh market because it stayed open and you can obviously see the effect of the water rate change there.
Right.
They look at-
But the Kettle Hose was closed quite a bit this winter,
Right.
wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, it
and the
was.
golf course.
So I don't know, you'd almost want to see what a full year of, wide open economy has, but you certainly could try to find a percentage that makes sense to get them back down to what they were used to. Some kind of an average reduction that, I don't think they should be paying less than they used to under the old rates. That's certainly true. Right?
No, I guess my thought would be to try to keep them in one of the lower tiers, regardless of how much they're using, as long as it's not, there are a couple uses here that Jen pointed out. They're using it for both food prep and irrigation.
Right.
So we got to be careful there. But my own thought would be if it's all food related, that they ought not to have to pay a higher rate in a different tier, even if they're using more water because they're producing food.
Well, high ground is certainly, that must be irrigation. They couldn't possibly be serving that much food at the high ground.
Yeah, that's one of the ones. There's a couple of them here that we need to parse out and we, as they say, the devil's in the details, but conceptually, that's what I'm proposing for us to think about with the water rate change.
Scott, could I just say from a billing perspective, if we move forward with a separate meter for irrigation, that would make applying a different rate for non-irrigation use easier from a billing perspective, just to have in the back of your mind. It would
Okay,
also help with something like this where they use it for both irrigation and food prep.
okay, thank you, Jen.
Where is Stop and Shop? Are they on comm system?
Yeah. Yeah. Great,
Okay.
great food for thought.
No. Good one, Tom.
Little water
All right.
commissioner humor there, huh?
A rare water commissioner humor, much appreciated. Okay, we're doing really well here with the agenda, and we're getting some really good inputs. And Jen, hope you're taking good notes, because I'm not.
I am.
And my brain needs notes these days, so thank you for recording all this. I guess that moves us on to the upcoming district meeting. We got a vote. We got a strong candidate for position for election, and we also have the annual district meeting. I just want to remind the other two commissioners that I am not going to be able to make that meeting due to a conflict. So I'm hoping that one of you can carry the flag and at that meeting. I don't know if we need to designate that now. Maybe we should.
Probably should.
Mark, Tom.
Probably should step up here. I don't. Mark, were you at the last one? Did you make the outside district?
Yeah, I was there. I presented last time.
Presented. So I guess that puts it on my plate, which is fine.
It's only one
I'd
article.
like to do that
Right.
because it's in the elementary school. I don't.
Tom, I've also heard a rumor that the chair of the water commissioners tends to change on an annual basis. So maybe this will be some good training for you in case you happen to get tapped for that post. So we'll see what happens there. But
That's the June meeting.
Strongly. I think you've really stepped it up here. Just saying.
Tom, this was the forewarning that I never had.
I knew that was coming.
all right, well, Tom, thank you for attending that. Jen did include the warrant. I don't think we need to go into it in any way tonight, but it is there. Now, do we have that posted? That's posted on the, where would people find that publicly?
So that's on the district website,
Okay.
firedistrict.org, on the Prudential Committee meeting page.
Okay, great. So I don't know if there's any more we need to talk about on those two items, Tom?
I had an email from one of the fire commissioners, and I think you guys were copied on that as well. Everybody was. We were all on that, and I just wanted to see. I kind of want to hear from Jen and Chris and Matt, if you'd like to throw in some opinions there as well about, how do you guys feel about the space you're in, and could it be improved, and would the elementary school potentially down the road lend itself to a better situation for the water department?
I'll talk some on this. Paul approached me quite a while back on this when he first did up the plan. I thought that was part of the school committee. I thought it came and was brought up at the school committee. Paul had done a plan on his own computer, on his own time, put in a shared fire department there with some district offices. And he said to me at the time, he said, you guys want to come over here and everything. And I told him outright, as I'll say to you guys, I don't think it's feasibly possible, or should I say financially possible, for us to move our operations over there. I had said to him, the only thing that could move over there would be our offices. Because as he stated in the letter to you, our current building was built in 1936. It was the original pumping station that wasn't meant for public access. Now there's OSHA regulations that have come out. The American Disabilities Act, if we're going to have public there, that we'd have to do some renovations down the line. I've been taking a wait and see approach on that. This is kind of a place that Paul had stated. He said, you know, we could throw in an office for you, your assistant, and Jen over here, and you could keep your operations still over there and we wouldn't have to worry about it. So this was done quite a while back, and it could fall on me here. I thought I did pass that along, but I guess I didn't. Maybe I was playing the wait and see if we were getting the school, how far everybody was going on it, and everything else. So I believe that we'd have to approach both, say if we did upgrades to our building or to there, we'd have to do some kind of survey or somebody spend some money at least to see what would be more financially suited to us.
So Chris, what is the operation? Is it the line batching?
Correct. The line batching, the brass, everything else that's there. How much is it going to cost to move the SCADA system out of there, which runs everything, the new security system we put in, that's fiber optics. I guess we could connect that over there. There's already, I believe, a fiber pretty close. We're right at the tank. So it could probably be looped over there, no problem. I don't know if it could be shared with everybody. There's a whole lot of unknowns there still. And I was kind of taking, like I said, the wait and see on it to see if we were going to get the school at this point. And I kind of thought when everything first came out, everybody was a little saying, oh, geez, let's see what we're going to have here. I think there's 3 different options for the school, whether we rebuild it, tear it down, or make a park or whatever, kind of see where it goes from there. So I guess I'll say I'm happy where we are, but if it could be financially better to go there, then fine. That's not a problem. I did sit there and look and said, this would be great. If you could put 3 offices here and we had to move here, that'd be great. And we could down the future. And if we had to tear our building down, we could.
Scott, I think that, that seeing that plan is the first I've seen of it this week. I think that one time we've talked about this in the past year is we heard from Chris the same reservations about, happy where he is. But I think if what the fire commission is looking for is some kind of consensus or solidarity, I think it's so vital that the district and the village get that building and control of it, control the fate of it, that if it takes a unanimous support of the different committees of the district, I think it makes sense to consolidate the office space, certainly, and whether the operational stuff can move or not. It seems to make a lot of sense to me to have offices that are available to the entire public, accessible, upgraded to what they need to be. And it certainly, as a 1-floor school, is certainly handicapped accessible. And I think that we should go on record in advance of the district meeting as saying the water commissioners are not opposed to investigating the moving of our office space to the school. I think we deferred to Chris in the initial instance in his hesitation, but this is now coming, it's coming to the forefront, and I think we ought to take a vote on something.
Commissioner Pisano is here tonight, and he doesn't have his hand up, but I'm guessing he wants to say something. So I'm going to recognize him at this point. Richard. And you're on mute here. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Thank you very much for the opportunity. The purpose of my email to you all was not to necessarily espouse a specific use of the building, but rather to ask for your support for the article for the comprehensive study. The possibility that it could serve the water department as well as the fire department in meeting office space needs and bringing things into OSHA and ADA compliance and such is one possible outcome if the study ends up showing that that is an economically smart move to consider. It would be substantially down the road, and by a number of years, I think most of us will be gone, or at least I probably will be, before we would see any completion of that. But this is just about asking for your recognition that as each of the committees looks at long-term planning, we really, I believe, ought to be supporting at the annual district meeting, funding this comprehensive study so that we start to get some hard numbers about what all the options are, including the option of demolishing the building and restoring it to some kind of greenfield. Because right now we're working with what was a very shaky estimate from the town that bounced between 800,000 and $1 million, depending on who you were talking to.
Yeah.
So we really, I believe, just need to get a comprehensive study by some professionals in there to give us a map of what our options are and what it would cost so that we can make smart decisions. That was the purpose of the email this morning, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Richard. I'll just state, well, Tom, let me ask you first. Do you have a take on this?
Yeah, information is always good, right? I mean, if we need information to determine that we could benefit from that, and if it's economically to the benefit of the district in the long term, I think we would need to support that. Without that information, it's kind of hard to make a decision about what should happen. So I like the idea of supporting the study. It seems just excessive to me. It really does. For $200,000 seems really excessive for a study when I think most people in the village have already decided that, yeah, that's not a bad idea. But again, that's decided from the heart and not from the brain so much, and because of a lack of information. So I think that Rick makes a good point. You know, if we have more information, and if it requires that much money to get that information, then I think we should support it.
Richard, question, what's the duration of the study? How long will it take to complete that?
The feedback we got from the architectural firm is that they could probably produce a set of options and reasonably hard numbers in approximately 6 months.
6 months, okay. And
So
that's that time frame is okay with the town, I presume, in terms of deliberating on what they're ultimately going to do here? In other words, they'll wait for us?
If we agree to accept the building and property, the only restriction I understand in terms of the town is that we cannot use it for some economic generating purposes.
Okay.
The funding in the Article 16 that would accept the property provides money for the overhead of carrying the building for a year. If the study can be completed within 6 months, we would be in a position of then evaluating what the options are while we can still support the building. And next year, look at, based on those numbers, what we might want to do going forward.
Okay. Well, I'll just weigh in my own take. I agree with Commissioner Robinson. Since I've been thinking about this, and it does strike me that it seems like a good building. It's something we ought to be able to make use of somehow. I don't like the idea of tearing it down. On the other end, as we've been on record many times, whatever happens there, our first number one consideration is water quality. I tend to think I would trust and feel most comfortable with us being the residents there, or some of the residents more than others. And I don't mean to sound egotistical there, except that I think there are a number of things we could do on that site, and maybe even do some innovative demonstration. We talked a little bit about a stormwater treatment project and innovative alternative septic. I do think office use is a low intensity compared to some of the options that have been discussed. So I think we probably could come up with a water quality standards and criteria such that we could do something like that and have it be acceptable. I don't have a clue on the operational side. We've talked, I defer to Chris and Jen and others, and certainly the study you're talking about. So I guess I'd ask for a motion here because it sounds like the district meeting is coming up. And I think, I guess my own opinion is it seems like it's a reasonable thing to support and have the study done and look at the options. So, but I would ask, are there any other, maybe before we take a motion, are there any other input, questions or comments from the public here or anybody? All right, then I would entertain a motion, gentlemen.
I would move that the Water Commission recommend I think was it Article 17 for the needs study or the building study. And that we certainly recommend that the district acquire that property or the part of the property, the western half of the property that's been in play.
A second?
I would second that. I would say, Article 16 is the actual article that receives the property through the transfer from the town. So I think that is kind of our priority in terms of support. So if we could add that into the motion, that we support Article 16
Sure.
To transfer that property to the district from the town, and that given that passes, that we fully support Article 17 so that we have enough information to make an educated decision about what's the best option for the district to do with that.
Commissioner Rob, do you accept that amendment?
Yes, I do accept that friendly amendment.
All right, well, we have an amendment to support Articles 16 and 17. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. All right, well, Richard, thank you for your letter and thank you for attending. And thank you, Chief Rude. I think you're still here for attending. We appreciate that. And we obviously want to work cooperatively with you. Happy to do that. So thank you again.
I appreciate the consideration. I would also just add that the fire commissioners have all unanimously voiced support for Article 16 and agree with you that first and foremost, we need to get that property to protect the water quality in the district. Thank
Wonderful.
you again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to additional public comment. Is there any? Okay, we are on to next meeting date. Jen, can you help us with that?
23rd, I believe, is the fourth Wednesday, which is the last day of that moratorium. That's why we did it that day.
That's a Thursday, 24th.
No,
Okay.
23rd. No, 23rd is Wednesday.
That's right.
So
Yep.
it would be June 23rd we're talking about.
Yes.
Right. That's okay with me. Everybody good on that?
June 23rd,
Yes.
I'll be around.
All right. And again, I just want to state that there's going to be some homework for this one, because I want to return several of these items, and we don't have a lot of time in an hour and a half to. And we've got some great creative thoughts. Jenna, if you could get highlight maybe some of the suggestions on some of these items whenever you can get that out soon. And maybe you could help me craft a homework assignment to the commissioners, including myself, because I want to come to that meeting with some ideas, thoughts to move some of these items forward, because we're starting to accumulate several important things. And I just want to get some motion on them one way or the other. So with that, yep.
Mr. Chairman, I think the irrigation policy has got a good foundation, certainly in the purpose and the preamble and the rationale. It's just a question of the implementation that we need to hammer out. I think it'd be good to put a little matrix together of these options for implementation, and just do a little matrix of the pros and cons of each, and make it more like a menu, and maybe we'll take a little bit of each. But I think that's the way to kind of organize it.
All right, well, I'll accept that as a homework assignment for Jen and I. Is that
I was
okay
going to
with you,
suggest the
Jen?
chairman ought to be doing that since this is his thing.
Well, I will, but when you
Jen
said
has enough to do.
when you say matrix, I think of Jen immediately.
No, Jen has the notes. You have the matrix.
I'm still chairman here.
I'll help however I can.
All right, that sounds great. Is there anything else?
Just in terms of the district meeting, do I need to prepare any slides or anything, Jen? Chris?
Oh, you'll just have
Run through
to,
the budget like the articles like I've done in the past.
so you'll just have to read the article. Ray will come to the meeting with that language. It'll be pretty close to what's in the warrant, but he has to add in how he's financing it or whatever. So you'll have to read the article. They'll open it up to questions. You may have to answer some questions on the budget, and I'll send you the same notes that I sent to Scott for the meeting on Monday night.
Perfect.
All the talking points.
I
We only have
think,
the one article.
well, I think that we, the budget is always talking about expenses. We also need to show the slide of revenues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we did that last year with the pie charts, and we showed how the pie has grown huge compared to what it used to be in terms of water revenues, and that helps to offset any increase in district tax, all things being equal. I think we need to keep making that point, that this department is more than pulling its weight at this point. And
Yep.
so Jen might be able to dust off the pie chart from last year, and maybe we could have a third pie, Jen. So 20, 21,
Now,
22,
Commissioner
whatever.
Robinson, why couldn't you make the pie chart?
So last
That is
year-
way beyond my technical ability.
Oh, the pie chart last.
I know how to make a matrix.
We didn't have the district meeting last year was outside, so we didn't have any pie charts.
True.
Correct.
Well, we
There
had-
was-
we-
there's-
Handout.
I think
Well,
we did
we
it.
had it for some presentation. I forget what it was.
Yes.
I think we did it at budget and candidates night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn, but I do want to thank Matt for attending here. Thank you for being here, Matt. We appreciate it. And
Ask him if there's a score yet, too.
I'm
No,
sorry.
don't. We're recording the
Oh.
game.
We got it.
And please feel free to jump in with discussion. We appreciate that you're here and we want to hear from you. So thank you.
Hey, thank you for having me. And, once again, just a fly on the wall. If there's anything I feel I need to add, I will.
All right, that's great. No pressure, but we like it that you're here. Thank you.
You guys are doing great.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
The second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Go Bruins.
Go Bruins.
Go
Bye,
Bruins.
friends.
And I'll reach out to you and just so that I can make sure I have what I need, and even if it's a handout
Sure.
to show our revenues, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye now.